I'm Marius, CTO and co-founder, but I had many different roles at UiPath. This is my first job since college. I think it's 15 years ago. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Mircea Nagovic. I lead the applied science team at UiPath. We build machine learning models and then we work with the engineering team to put them into production.
Hi, hello. My name is Marius as well. I'm working on the orchestrator team, and I'm working at UiPath for 3 years this summer. And currently, my current role is engineering manager, but before that, I was a programmer.
Hi, I'm Lavinia. I'm with the studio team, and I've been with UiPath since 9 years ago.
Hello, I'm Vasi. I am a software engineer on the orchestrator team, and I've been with UiPath for a year and a month.
Congratulations on the year. That's great.
He's already a veteran.
So I'm hoping we can start with you, Marius T, the two of you guys. You've been here since the beginning. What was that growth like, both as the company grew so fast? How did that growth, what did that look like on the engineering team? And how did you kind of deal with that scale?
Yeah, as a company first, it was a roller coaster. We've seen a lot of ups and downs, and we had to survive to get to this success story. But in terms of engineering, since we started accelerating from the initial team of 10 engineers to hundreds of engineers like we have right now in the core development group. So we had to recruit as fast as possible and at the same time try to raise the bar in hiring. So to do that, we had to apply some parallel programming and start new developer centers at the same time. So it was a huge challenge to start from scratch, new dev centers in India, in US, even in Cluj here, we have a second office. So yeah, the first big challenge is to grow as fast as the business requires you to grow. And then you end up in challenges of collaborating between these multiple developer teams spread across all geographies, and the latency in communication and collaboration becomes a very big challenge. So just like in programming, try to localize, use the cache. So proximity is a very important aspect in working with the developer teams. So we're trying to give ownership to the teams of different projects and components and try to minimize dependencies between them. And then the architecture becomes very important to make this achievable because you have different components and dependencies and you need to develop them in parallel. I think you've seen how the platform, we don't see multiple products. It's a single product. It's a development platform that has different components. And we structured it in such a way where it's very extensible and multiple teams can develop features in parallel. So finding the right balance between the architecture, refactoring work, and delivering new features as fast as possible and making teams productive was a big challenge, and it still is.
All right, I'm always interested in how the choices you made at the beginning are impacting you now. So Lavinia, I know that you guys had chose the Windows stack way back when, and I'm wondering what went into that decision and then kind of any challenges you guys see now as you use it.
Yeah, so I think choosing Windows Workflow Foundation was a very good decision. When you are at a startup phase and you're just a few people, it's foolish or arrogant to think that you can build the entire product yourself. And I think it was important, the fact that we were able to deliver fast, to test our product and our idea was very, very important. Choosing Microsoft gives you a boost of confidence. You expect them to have great products and great technology, and also the customers have confidence in that technology. The workflow engine is very powerful. It looks good. It was fairly new back then. It had all the new stuff. Our customers saw that, and they were very delighted about it. The architecture is robust also. So yeah, it helped us a lot. It was one of our best unfair advantages. Right now, it becomes challenging because we grew, our customers grew, and we're kind of reaching the platform's limit, the Wolfram Foundation limits. So now the big challenge is how do we deliver great features that people need, like a rich debugger experience, better data management, I don't know, cooler looking UI with this platform. So the direction is, luckily they outsourced, I mean they open sourced the code. So we are thinking of owning it. We actually started to own the engine. We ported it to .NET Core. We have a repo for that. And we are thinking of also porting the designer as well, or moving to web. So these are two directions that we're exploring, and we're going to explore further.
Great. And I know you've made a lot of contributions to on the open source side, so that's great.
Yeah.
Vasile, I was wondering, there's a lot of challenges here in having a product that's both on-prem and on the cloud, has both kind of components. What has that been like as you work?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. Not in any particular order. So deployment has been an issue. We have to make sure that the application is easily deployed both on-prem and on cloud. This also, I mean, the architecture also is influenced by this on-prem and cloud thing, because you cannot do like crazy architecture and then your customers won't want to deploy an overly complicated application that runs on 100 servers and needs all kinds of maintenance. It just increases the cost of maintenance. Another thing is if you have the same application that runs on both on cloud and on-prem, how do you still want to take advantage of the benefits that the cloud offers you? And those benefits don't work on-prem, so you have to make the application be modular and decoupled so that you can switch off the components that don't run in the cloud. For example, I'd say like storage services like Azure Blob Storage or Amazon S3, and you can swap these with something that works on-premise, which could be as simple as a file server. Another thing is making sure that the upgrade works. This is more of an on-prem thing, but also the cloud still has the same problem. So we upgrade fairly often, and we have to make sure that not only the website behaves the same, but also robots and the studio that connect to the orchestrator still has backwards compatibility. And once you do a thing, you cannot go back. You cannot break things because customers get upset. And another aspect is also testing. So if you have a highly modular, I wouldn't say very highly modular, but you have a modular and configurable applications that can run with stuff like, let's say, Windows authentication that works only on-prem. You don't have that in the cloud. You still want to test all possible configurations. So, for example, how it works with Active Directory or without it, how it works with this feature enabled or not. So,
challenging.
Yeah, challenging.
Speaking of that, I think you mentioned the customer base. Marius C. There's the customers obviously mostly enterprise. What's that scale been like? What are the challenges of working with enterprise customers, even in terms of just scaling up in terms of number of robots or just the kind of the challenges that are there?
Yeah, you mentioned the number of robots. That's an important point because for us, we consider that each robot is an individual client connected to orchestrator, similar to a client accessing a web page. So, and currently, we support something like 50K, 100K robots per orchestrator environment. And each environment has a personal connection to Orchestrator via SynLR. And it's important. Robot orchestrated communication can be split into two categories, robot status and job status updates, making sure that when you start a job, as Ripa showed, when you start a job in Orchestrator, the robot will start as soon as possible, but also making sure that after that, while the workflow is running, it can access data from Orchestrator and access queue items or assets, and that the system is okay. Some of the problems initially were, we didn't support more than 100 robots because we have a method invoked every 30 seconds. We call it a heartbeat, which reports the status of the robot, and we are using entity framework there, and we use the entity update model from entity framework, and we reached the maximum connection pool size, and that was a big problem. Then we decided that okay, that's not working. Let's use a custom SQL query to update the data in the database. That worked for a while. After that, we had to bring more optimization for the performance here. For this, Remos helped, and now we have a command and status cache, and we query the database only when necessary. This helped us a lot. Other than that, we also had the problem about which Remos talked as well, related to logging. You have tens of thousands of robots, all of them are sending logs to Orchestrator that might bring the system down. That's why we decided to implement throttling. Another problem related to the second part of robot orchestrated communication was that in Orchestrator we have a system, queuing, which allows work to be distributed to multiple robots. And initially we had a bug that multiple robots, let's say, acquire the same queue item, and that's not good. One queue item should be acquired by only one robot. And to implement this queuing system, we decided that we will use an SQL implementation of a queue. This is related to Vasi's answer that we weren't able to use a dedicated solution for queuing because it's important to install it easily on premise, so we couldn't use RabbitMQ or Kafka or anything like that. For that, we had to look on the web, how can we make sure that this queue is optimized and that one queue item is retrieved only once. For that, we had to update the queue and use some SQL hints, read past and row lock. Another optimization that we had to perform was related to NuGet server, to the NuGet package storage and server. By default, if you just add the NuGet server to an application, the package will be stored locally, and all the queries will go to the file system. And if you have multiple nodes that are connected to the same storage location, we ended up in some cases where a package was added to only one node, but other nodes weren't able to see it. So we decided, okay, we have to change this. And now we are using a database storage for that, saving the metadata in the database, and the package is locally or in a blob storage, like AWS or Azure storage. We also have a solution for on-premise for that. And what's interesting here is that now moving to the cloud, we'll have to support more and more robots. And also it will be maybe harder to investigate what's happening if a problem occurs. So for that we are investing heavily right now in telemetry and whatever we need to make sure that we can identify a bug easily. Until now, problems were reported by clients that always try to use more robots than we thought that we can support, and that's why we started using tools like WinDBG or getting familiar with logs and parsing logs and all of that. So yeah.
All right, you said something in there. It worked for a while, and that's probably on a lot of startup and companies' tombstones, right? It worked for a while, and the team couldn't adapt. So I think it actually speaks really well to the UiPath team that you're able to kind of move through that. So finally, we heard a little bit about kind of machine learning in action, but I'm wondering, what kind of frameworks and models that you guys are using, and kind of what the decision-making process was like there.
We use TensorFlow and we use PyTorch. Both of them are great frameworks, and we've been using them for the last 1.5 years or so. There are some interesting differences between them, in particular related to the difference between the static and the dynamic graph, which has some implications over how debuggable those frameworks are. PyTorch is easier to debug. On the other hand, TensorFlow, there are more models being built to TensorFlow. At least this used to be the case like a year ago. Now things are changing. But when we start the project, we try to see what are our options. We want to build a baseline as fast as we can. For the project, for the demos that Dragos did earlier, for example, for the control detection, the choice was reasonably easy to make. It was to use TensorFlow and to use faster RCNN. We had to use faster RCNN because it gives us better quality. It is a very famous repo done by the researchers at Google. So, and if you choose that, you by default you get TensorFlow. For the receipts and invoice processing, we use PyTorch. We build the models ourselves, and it is really a great framework. You can do very quickly. You can develop quite complex models in a short amount of time. It is very debuggable, and I think that's the greatest strength of PyTorch. And for our OCR project, we do a mix of things. We started with the same object detection. Then we try to build some encoder-decoder in PyTorch. Then we use some other. So basically, we try to see what are the options and try to make a call. And then at some point, if the project has legs and we do a POC, then we choose one of those frameworks and we go forward.
Great. Great. All right, so I think we want to leave as much time as we can here, so I'll go to best I can. It's definitely not going to be able to see up there, but, oh wait, I got one. Here we go.
Hi, thank you for the great presentation. I have a trivia question. Is there any function as a service in your cloud architecture?
No, not yet.
It was an easy question to answer. I don't know, it might have hurt, but it was an easy question to answer. Anybody else? What do we got? Can we, yeah, here we go.
Can you hear me? Okay. How do you implement new functionality? Do you use feature flags? If you do use feature flags, are you using across the products, like also for integration and?
I'll take that.
Okay.
Well, it depends. I think that it depends on product. For Orchestrator, you use a system of feature flags. Currently, something really simple. Just add something to a configuration file, and the feature is enabled or disabled. For Studio, it might be different. But moving to the cloud, we have to use a more broad feature flag system. And currently, we're researching different technologies for this. And feature flags as a service, like launch directly or something similar.
Going over here. How much emphasis do you put on automated testing? Yeah? Nailed it.
We didn't do such a great job in the beginning where we were a small team and we didn't have so many customers. But now we put a lot of emphasis in automation, in testing automation. And actually we're using our product to test itself.
Yeah, I would hope that you put emphasis on automation. Who else we got? Right over here. There's someone running to you right now. They're desperately trying to get to you. There we go.
So it's a big company, so I'm wondering about knowledge management. So if you grow, you have lots of knowledge, lots of teams geographically spread across the world. So if someone needs an information about some other team is doing or so, how do you proceed? How do you implement such a system?
Yeah, with our background of being a small startup company, we didn't need this too much because everyone was in the same room and knowledge was shared very easily. But as we have grown to different sites, this is a very important aspect, and we put a lot of effort into structuring the information. We use a bunch of different tools. We don't use Stack Overflow Teams yet, but we're considering it. But we use Confluence and a lot of other tools. The challenge is to find this information, because now we have a lot of documentation and knowledge, but it's kind of hard to search for it and find the right answer. So you still need to ask someone on Slack, and they will point you to the right direction.
Oh, okay. I think you should give it a spin to Q&A from Stack Overflow, by the way.
I like that guy. Got one here?
Over here.
Okay.
Up here. Hello. I'm talking. Oh yeah.
Sure. I can't see you, so you're talking.
No, my question is actually related to the last one. So, what was the reasoning behind having opening development centers all over the world, basically? So you said you have 5 development centers. So why and how do you distribute what the centers are working on? Is it like, do the engineers have to be closer to the customers? That's why you did the US centers, or why did you do that?
No, that wasn't the reason for engineering. That was the reason for our delivery and consultant department to be close to the customers. But for engineering, we tried to go where the biggest talent pool was available. So we went to India and US because the talent pool in Romania wasn't such large as our ambitions to grow.
I see a guy with a microphone.
Hello. I'll also build a bit on the last questions. How do you scale in terms of agile methodologies? Do you have something in mind, a framework or something that you use now that you grew very fast and quite large compared to?
We are very agile, but we don't have a standard methodology or a strict methodology. We borrow things from Scrum, from extreme programming, from Kanban, whatever works for each team. We give flexibility to teams to organize themselves.
I mean, overall, do you use something like Safe or Nexus or something to organize all the teams overall? So I understand you're working like feature teams or something like that, but you have like a release schedule or release train. How do you make sure that everyone is aligned overall on this?
Yes, we have a release cadence and a release train, and we looked at Safe and other models, but again, we're not so rigorous and structured. We want to empower people and give them flexibility to organize themselves.
You still got a question? Yeah. Just yell it out.
I'm curious if you've encountered problems with being shut. Seems like very likely.
That was a really long question for you to not have a microphone. So I'm going to try to summarize that for especially the back row. The question is around licensing, and if UiPath has run into trouble around licensing with different vendors or platforms based on using the tool on top, the automation on top. Is that fair? Yeah. Cliff notes here?
Take a stab at it. So I think we had an issue with SAP at one point because they were licensing it per user, and our robots being much faster, they could accomplish more tasks with less licenses. But this is more of a philosophical question in the industry that needs to adapt with this new way of thinking automation first and not only design processes around and licensing around users. So I think it's still an open question in debate in the industry.
Down with Brandon.
You're basically one of the biggest employers around, and you've grown quite a lot, so you have, okay, sure. So basically you're one of the biggest employers around, you've grown quite fast, you employed a lot of software developers on all levels of experience. So I have a two-part question. First of all, what's the skill that software developers lack most? Since you had a lot of difficult debugging to do, I'm sure you had some problems. And second, what do you think the local universities could do to better prepare the students, taking into account that they already have your RPA courses?
Do you have another question for my colleagues as well?
Well, for
Some
everyone.
engineering questions? Okay, I'll take this one as well, if you don't want to. So in terms of skills, one of the reasons we went to US as well, especially in the Seattle area, is because of this cloud expertise and working on large-scale distributed systems that in Romania we haven't seen so much. So even though we have great talent here, the exposure to this kind of big projects, it's a bit lacking. So we had to look in different ways to match the skills that we require. And on the second part, on universities, we have an internship program. We have a sponsorship of labs inside the universities, and I think we have a good collaboration with academia and research as well.
Any personal learning and development down the line that you would recommend for new software developers? People are trying to learn.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we need cloud experience, at least for orchestrator. That's important topic for now.
I also recommend people in university to focus on math, because that's quite hard, but it pays off later on.
I hate math. Can only do it as it pertains to money. Anyone else? Let's see. We got a few minutes left. Anyone holding a microphone that just wants to start talking? Okay. Oh man, there's no way I'm gonna hear you. Just give him 1 second. Nah, that's fine. Here she comes.
Okay. Hi. I have two questions, in fact. How does maturity of this business looks like to you? And secondly, are you seeding any new ideas for the future? And which are those?
I can answer the first one. In terms of maturity, we are still not there. So this is still a young company with hopefully a bright future ahead. In terms of ideas, we have maybe too many ideas and a limit on what we can execute. So I think focus is more important than execution is more important than ideas.
That guy who we skipped over.
Yeah. Do you have any plans on bringing your products to Mac?
Ooh, I had that same question. I didn't ask it.
From a business requirement, we don't have this pressure, but we have a lot of Macs in the company, a lot of Mac lovers, and we have some articles of how we can use the product and even develop using creative solutions like virtual machines, remote desktops. But automating business processes, it's still mostly on the Windows platform. The other parts are cross-platform, and we're also looking at supporting mobile applications, automating new kind of applications. So that's one of the ideas that we're not pursuing right now.
All right. Looks like I got one right here.
My question is the following. So you have worked a lot in machine learning. If you have a thought, if you have some idea of applying this machine learning in some other domains, excepting the one that you have shown, I'm thinking mostly about cybersecurity, cryptology, things of this kind.
You're asking in what other fields can machine learning be used?
If you, as a company, have thought about applying in these particular fields, cybersecurity, cryptology, things of this kind.
I don't think we thought about those kind of things. At least I didn't.
The possibilities are endless, but...
Said like a C-suite kind of guy.
Hello again. Your colleague or the presenter before you showed us a way to capture data from a text. Now, we all know that that text might change its properties. Do you have in plan, or you have something more robust to target specific, I don't know, inputs better than just, I don't know, taking their tag and their names or IDs?
Yeah, we do. We are looking, and we already have a solution of identifying elements as a human would. So kind of looking at the data, but more in relationship with other objects as well. So we have anchors. When you look at an input, when you, like, if you for example, are searching for, to type your password in, you don't look, you look first for the password field, for the label, and then type into the password. So we have this kind of strategies as well. Also, our selector can be configured to have attributes that you think are more reliable. Sometimes it's text, sometimes it's, I don't know, the CSS selector, and maybe the position. So there are different kind of strategies that you can
and
identify.
Also the computer vision will work probably better and better. At some point, it's not impossible for the computer vision to beat this kind of selector and those technologies. We definitely hope it's going to be the case. It's not unclear yet, so we'll have to see.
All right. So I think that's all the time we have. I want to say thanks to our panelists, and thanks for coming up.